brief, concise, to the point, without any repetition, and to try to get things done in a quick, and I'm not trying to rush you to the point where you can't get points across, but I think we're sometimes a little too repetitive and not abiding by that procedure of let's keep it simple, let's not repeat ourselves, let's et cetera. And people in the audience, if you want to say something, please go up the podium, because that's the only way that the people on Zoom can hear. And that is what I wanted to say, and it applies to everybody here and everybody out there and everybody there. Any other comments? Okay, should we move on to the second point? RV and camper proposal. I have a problem here in that I think two of the people on the commission have RVs at their homes, right?
I do.
And Thomas does too.
Trying to get rid of it, but
How do you want to deal with this? We've gotten information from other towns. I don't think we've gone through it enough to make any decisions, but I wonder whether it's right for you to be as involved as somebody who doesn't have one. But I just throw that out for discussion.
That's an interesting point. I can tell you that based on the draft, so the summary that Leon has written, that my property is in compliance with how it is written. Exactly how it's written. In fact, my Airstream is a temporary structure where no one essentially lives there. We use it just on occasion ourselves, and it is hooked up to septic. So I will certainly acknowledge that. That's a good point. We've been talking about this for months at this point, and all we have is a summary, correct? And I think at one point we had asked, how do we take it from a draft summary to language that actually is written for our zoning ordinances, correct? So that's a very valid point, but at the very least, I think we should move forward with taking this out of summary format and having it actually written in language that, regardless of who abstains, that
Let me,
we can actually look at it, the public can view it rather than just hearing a.
let me comment on that. If you go to, I've talked to the town of Bennington, I've talked to Landgrove and Londonderry, talked to Arlington. There's something I'm missing, others, and everybody's different. Everybody has different rules. And the state has different perspectives too. I'm not sure I know the answer to the situation, except what you're saying is that we need to hopefully try to find a next step. And your point about the way you're set up is that's almost a situation where you don't worry, and it doesn't apply because A, you have a sewer hookup, and B, it's not full-time use. But there are instances where there are full-time uses without a sewer hookup, which I think is a problem and maybe a state legal problem. But
It may be, I think, and this issue was brought up before I ever sat here. So it was not of a particular concern to me. But I think the reason why it was brought up is, again, there is nothing
correct.
that says you can, can't, and if you can, how you should be doing it.
Right.
Did you have a? So if anyone were to ever ask the question,
Yep.
can I just park an Airstream?
We don't have any rules
camper
right now. We don't have any rules.
right next to Northshire Bookstore? There are no rules
Yep.
governing whether or not you can or can't do that.
Leslie.
I have a question as to who writes language for us so that it's legally correct?
So in the past, the planning commission has always done it with the advice of our town planner. So we would sit here at the meetings and we would talk about the language back and forth.
You mean Janet
Yeah, and it would be Peter now.
or Peter? Yeah.
But we would sit at the meeting and we would discuss what's the best language. And we would actually talk about a single sentence for 15 minutes back and forth on the same sentence to get the language to where there was no confusion. And then that would be the one sentence for there. We go to the next sentence and we'd talk about it for a few minutes. And it would just we would spend a whole meeting on just a single couple paragraphs of something. And that would be what we had accomplished for the night, but we'd vote on it. It would be written and read and added to whatever we're doing, and we'd move on.
We have, I'm just thinking in terms of my past experience. It's a rather different situation. I mean, it's a city. It's a
Right. We
mid-sized city.
just don't have the people. there.
But we had a legal counsel. We have a legal counsel here, who used to draft some of this for us,
But I think
if we needed to.
I
We
think-
also would do our own and then turn it over to make sure it was.
we would probably have to get it as close as we could to that point. And then Gordon would look at it and go, okay, this looks good, can't do that,
Well,
but we'd have to get it kind of to that stage.
all right.
And
And if, I mean, we're not going to do it here.
well, this is usually where we would do it. We would sit
Really?
in Meetings and we
Oh,
discuss.
you wouldn't have a subcommittee?
No, we would sit and
No, I
discuss.
think you're right, Rusty. I think maybe there does have to be a subcommittee because there's a lot of homework to do to get to a point where you just have the facts of how you think it should be addressed. Then it has to put in the quote legalese. But to gather all enough information to then detail what the rules you think should be, that is not going to happen here at this table
No.
tonight or tomorrow, next time. So maybe it is a subcommittee.
I mean, we have something because Leon drafted.
Yeah, right. We use that as a basis and we
So
discuss.
that could be a
each
basis
sentence and
for,
we
since,
Figure out where it would fit into the.
yeah, and if.
Excuse me, if I could, the VLCT has a program, we could just ship them what you have already cooked up and they can advise you.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would, there has.
That's
there has
something
to
we're a
be
member of, right?
Yeah, there has to be a pathway because none of us are, at least I'm not a lawyer. I don't know about anybody else. And it's, it can be really tricky
Of course.
I mean, we can write down our ideas, but then that has to be translated into language that can go into an ordinance.
Correct.
And I just want to address Wilbur, none of this actually affects or benefits me in any way. And the language that I said you called around other towns, the language I got from this was based on a tourist heavy area. It wasn't Vermont.
I remember you told us it was Florida.
It was a tourist heavy area and Manchester being a tourist heavy town, we want to kind of, use similar things that have worked in the past for other areas. Vermont is different, I know, than other states, and I want to respect that, but at the same time, we have to realize Manchester is different from other towns in Vermont as well. There's only a few towns like Woodstock or Stowe that are similar in size and in their character as Manchester.
If I could make a suggestion, I think a subcommittee to address this would be a good idea. Would you be willing to be on that?
No,
No, okay,
this is not a major interest.
okay, that's
So
fine.
I would prefer
Well,
not to.
so
if
we
other
need to
people-
find somebody that would want to be on.
I'd be willing to be on it, but and I don't think that it benefits me personally, but if the three of you think that it benefits me personally, then I shouldn't be on it.
I don't think it benefits you.
No, I don't.
It's-
Why
you know,
would it
you're-
benefit you personally?
Can you and Leon try to get together and come to us, and it may not be at the next meeting, but say the meeting after that, come to us with a plan of what, hopefully close enough so we can talk about it and maybe make a decision during that talk.
Yeah.
That this is what we want to do.
Okay.
And you're gonna need help over there as to what other towns are doing. I'm pretty sure. From Peter and Elias.
Okay.
All right? All right on that?
Mhm.
Temporary signs, sandwich boards, and open flags. You got here a document in front of you. And this has started with discussions with local retailers who were dissatisfied with the flag and tent sign situation. And we're trying to be more understanding of their needs. And there's been a lot of going back and forth on it. And I got some help from Catherine at Lepeche, who wrote up part of this herself. And then we made some changes, and then Tim Waker made some adjustments. And this is the document that we're looking at as a rough, a start. And it's not something, well, if we agree on it, then it's something I believe we would warn and move forward on. But basically what it says is it allows a small flag, not a 3x5 flag. And we found a flag that a number of people like, and including almost everybody here that's seen it. And we have addressed the tent sign situation, and we think that that's, was somebody, we think that we have a document here that seems to cover the issues and is acceptable to both the retailers. I believe John Burnham has seen this document. Yes. And I think it solves our problem. It helps the retailers. It gets rid of the angst and confrontation, and I think it's a good thing to accept.
John raised his hand.
John, yes.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So thanks for sharing that, Wilbur. And, I just noticed some things and kind of what you guys were just talking about when you're talking about the RV situation. There's some things that in that new language that has been written that actually kind of contradicts earlier things in the zoning regulations. So I don't know if we want to talk about those things now, and kind of talk about some of these additions and whether they're actually
signs-
necessary.
In the
Sorry?
signage and flag, in the signage and flag document,
Yeah,
to talk about specifically what the changes are.
yeah,
Okay, fine. I will do that. We provided a flag. It's here. And I'll show it to people. It's different than the flag that's some people in town are using. This is a smaller version, and everybody that's seen it has thought it's an improvement over the 3x5 flags that some people are illegally showing. It basically says that the are of a design and a size approved by the zoning administrator and adhere to best reasonable practices in the retail, restaurant, and service industry. That was something that Catherine wanted to put in, not to be the manner in which you affix it is really no different than before. It's not to be in disrepair. It's supposed to be taken in when you're not operating. Those are the issues relative to the flag. As to freestanding signs, the tent signs that you see people put out in the morning, or sandwich signs, they're not supposed to be bigger than 27 by 46. And that's not the sign itself. That's with the feet and the handle. So it's not that big. And they're supposed to be taken in at night and also taken in bad weather. And that, again, is that sign, location, and design must be approved in advance by the zoning administrator and copied to DAB. And DAB is in favor of this. So
I think one of the fears before, and I put the weather in because it was a fear that it would blow loose.
Yes.
And could all hurt
Right.
somebody or
that's why that's in
damage
there.
property. I ran into one of the select board members today, and we were talking, and they proposed that the town be the one who has the flags here, and business owners can purchase them from the town. That way to ensure it's the same size and color and the same flag. In that way it's, that would be, he implied that the select board would approve of that.
Sounds great to me. Is that okay with you, John? that the town have the flag inventory?
I mean, I'm cool with that. I'm not sure whether you want to be the administrators of flags or whether you just want to put out the criteria and let people buy their own. So, I mean, that's really up to you all as to what's simpler for you.
I would have preferred having you buy them. They're $35 each. So, you tell us, do you want us to have them here, or do you want to buy 50 of them yourself and sell them at 35 to your members?
So just as much as you don't want to be the one that has to deal with buying flags and distributing them or having people buy them, likewise, that would be an enormous task for us to take on. Where again, I feel like it's simple. If that's the design and we have a place you can buy them, then it's easy for me to send an email to our members and say, this is, if it all gets approved down the road, then we can just say, look, these are the flags that are approved by the town to purchase. Here's where you buy them and let them go to town.
Okay, we will inform the select board that they're in the flag retailing business.
Say one thing. Because I haven't presented in front of the planning commission.
Can you state your name and
Courtney Callow, I own Willoughby's Depot Eatery. I'm a new business owner in the area, but born and raised here. I still want to say back to the camper thing. When you're talking about other towns in the state, and I know I don't mean to be repetitive, but when I've, Peter did due diligence, when I hung my logo flag, he called and said, you have to take that down. And I was stunned. I mean, I was like, what? And so I did call every other town similar to Manchester, Woodstock, Shelburne, Stowe, the bougie towns of Vermont. Every other town allows open flags. So I want to thank Wilbur for because again, I love this new flag. I think it looks beautiful, but that this has taken this long to, I'm just incredulous, that because the planning and zoning directors laughed at me. They're like, what do you mean? Woodstock, you go through Woodstock. That's the bougiest town in Vermont, and there's open flags. So this is, I'm happy to see this go through. I hope it goes through. We have multiple, vacant places with no businesses in there. I'm this tiny little place between, I've said it over and over, between a liquor store and a laundromat. So I need all the help I can get as far as people seeing where I am.
Thank you, Courtney.
So, thank you.
All righty, we will proceed ahead with this, and in my personal opinion, it's, yes, Bill.
It was, in my understanding, I was having some discussion with people in the town office that an idea was to have the town buy them in bulk because they get a better price on them, okay? And then business owners could just walk in here, give them a check and get the bill out of the zone, out of the planning and zoning office. Fairly simple.
That's what,
Everybody have everything online and doing their own individual purchase.
that's what we're gonna do.
Last I heard, it sounds like we're gonna leave them up to their own.
No, we're gonna get 50 of them bought, and they're gonna be here, and somebody can come buy them for the amount of money we pay for them.
I thought it was to leave them up to their own resources.
Quick question.
10 seconds, Steve.
Yes. One thing on the trailer thing, I happened to be in Rutland the other day and I went up to Home Depot and there was 3 trailers in the parking lot.
I know, it happens in Bennington too. It'll be part of the addressing it. It's an issue. And
That's what I would be more concerned about than the residential. I mean,
Good.
there was a truck out there on blocks. I mean, it was just
they
crazy.
park in the parking lot, the
Yeah.
Walmart parking lot in Bennington. We're
And
gonna,
the other thing is, on the stand-up sandwich flags, there used to be a time frame on those, so many per month, so 3 times a month, Peter, or something like that.
90 days.
That in there
That's a,
still or,
that's a different thing. That's a
Oh.
temporary sign. And we will address that,
okay.
okay?
Wilbur,
Yeah.
John Burnham has his hand up again.
Yes, John?
Hey, Wilbur, thank you. So yeah, so the flags language I looked at as far, and to me that works fine. It was more my concern about the freestanding sign and how it's written that I think you should take another look at real quick.
Okay,
Mainly because if you look at number 9, freestanding signs, we're talking about sandwich boards at / A-frames. And the 27 by 46, and the reason, again, that's a simple thing to put in as an exempt thing, but then it contradicts section 10.3.4, which says no permit is required, in the sense that that refers to a chart that says that they can't be more than 6 square feet. So again, it's just a matter of, it's great that you're looking at making this available so that people can put out sandwich boards, but if it just goes like this, it's going to contradict something early that's already written at like I said, section 10.3.4, no permit required. And then it references a chart 10.4 that actually says that they can't be more than 6 square feet, which is not
I
that
addressed-
size that you've written there.
I addressed that with Catherine, and the 27 by 46 is the size of a 2 by 3 sign with
Yep.
its feet, with its legs and its handle. So the sign itself is only 2 by 3.
And you're right. I don't disagree with the sign
But we can,
size.
we
The 20
can, we will
It's
turn
just,
it
you're gonna
over.
need to correct other parts in the, all I wanted
We
to point
can-
out was that there's
we can
language
turn it over
elsewhere in the,
to-
go
to
ahead,
the,
sorry.
Zoning administrative office to make sure it's correct in its
Yeah.
diction.
Okay,
Okay. Can we move on from this topic?
Sorry, I have two questions. One, I've only had this for about 15 minutes now, so do we still have time until our next meeting to continue reviewing this? Ask for,
The signage.
yeah, potential changes or recommendations.
Sure.
Right, because we're not voting on this
Correct.
right now. My second question has to do with other types of flags. If a business today, and if this were changed, could a business put out a pride flag? Or a flag of that nature? Is that something that
believe-
they are currently allowed to do? And with this change, would they then be allowed to do it?
I got the answer to that. So we are currently allowed to put out nation flags, and
State
you know,
flags.
state flags, I think pride flags are included in that.
I don't think it's nation plural. It's a US flag or a state flag, and I don't know the answer to
I've
the
seen,
pride flag.
I've seen some businesses put out multiple nation flags. So it's, but
I believe the ordinance says state flag and US flag,
okay.
and I don't know the answer to that.
We can research that.
We can ask the office to check on that.
Okay. I mean, the way that the new wording is written, it says flags of a nation or state. So you could fly flags of any nation or any state.
Right. Some people do.
And I know that people do now. I've seen
Yeah,
it before,
they
but
fly other nations as well.
I mean, I don't want to get us into a position where someone wants to put a pride flag out in front of their business and then someone else is like, well, I'm going to put out something completely
I
in
mean,
the opposite direction.
and that could happen. Pride month is next month and you want to be able to do that if you want to, but I think it'd be a very small handful that would.
Sure. And I know that businesses have done that.
Yeah, that would be against it.
And there hasn't been any complaints that I'm aware of,
I
but
think it was just the open flag was the only one people had contention with.
Can I ask you a question on flags? Sorry, my name is Joey Racy. I own Ye Old Tavern. I did not think I was going to be speaking, but I just bought flags for every branch of service of the US military. Are they allowed to be flown?
Doesn't specifically
Prohibit.
that.
It's not specifically prohibited.
We had Ukraine up there for.
Yeah, right.
A nation state. Yeah, it would be acceptable. I don't know. So,
Now, Marine Corps is not a nation yet.
well,
Yet.
If we're looking at the Pride, we might as well look at the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
think the point is well taken, but I think you just have to be so careful of how you put that in a written bylaw. Once you start with a pride, Black Lives Matter, the military flag, I mean, you really, you're opening a can of worms. You know, if that's the case, they're there to fly. You know, I mean, if you keep it just America and Vermont, then you know what you can fly. That's it. It's hard to say, you can't fly a military flag, but I mean, it's stipulations.
I was just gonna note,
Fine.
I was just gonna note that I was wrong. It's flags of a nation or state. Someplace I've seen it say the US flag or the Vermont flag, but it's not here. But we will look at this, and since we've been asked not to make this a final determination, we will fix that. And in the meantime, it's my personal opinion that we'll get these flags in inventory right away and look forward to people coming and buying them.
Yeah, and real quick, I think one of the reasons we couldn't prohibit a lot of flags is because someone wanted to fly a Hanukkah flag or something for, that would be considered part of their religion, and they should be allowed to do that. So we couldn't prohibit certain flags being flown. The same with the pride flag. I think we couldn't prohibit that as well.
That was the point that I was going to make. I support these changes. I'm going to be very clear.
Yeah.
I do. I don't particularly like this flag. I like the other ones that I've already seen flying. That's not an important distinction for me right now. But there is I think if we're talking about flags, there's a level of free speech and representation that if we're opening this up to something that simply says open, we're certainly opening this up to any number of flag.
Right, yeah, well, we said we were allowed to fly flags before, just not open flags.
Correct.
So it was, you know.
We will address that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All righty. Are we done with number 4? Commercial lighting proposal. Did you get a copy to John?
I did not.
Okay.
And I apologize, John. I didn't realize until today that I looked back at my notes that I had your email address. So I should have sent it along to you, and I apologize. So that was that, I dropped the ball there.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you want to finish that?
I really wanted to get it to John so his people can go over it and talk about what they want to change and what they like and don't like about it, and get feedback from them before we go any further on it. So that would be the,
I've been thinking about this. And I think, number one, I really don't think it should be mandated. I don't think we should mandate it. I don't think the businesses will be supportive of mandating. I
okay,
think.
go ahead.
I think town already is pretty well decorated for the holidays. And I'm not sure everything needs to be standardized. I am not a cookie cutter kind of person. I honestly don't see any reason why there can't be some creativity in terms of what people do. It's always, I've always found it tasteful. It's fun to look at. And part of the enjoyment of it is that it's not all the same. That different shops have different concepts, and you see different iterations.
Mhm.
I definitely don't, as I said, I definitely don't think it should be mandated, though. I think it gets to be very expensive, and there are lots of things which could complicate the situation. I mean, when you put them up, when you take them down? What happens if a light goes out? What happens if several lights go out? Are you then responsible for buying new lights? Is the town going to buy new lights and install them? What happens in an outage? I mean, there are just there's a myriad of possible things that we're asking, that we would be then asking business owners to handle because the town is not going to. So, I mean, that's my point of view at the moment.
Let me, I'm gonna interrupt for a second here. I thought that the best way to handle this is to hand the Business Owners Association the original document of Leon's. And I suspect that all of the issues that you just came up with are gonna come right back at us in that rate. The mandate, the cost, how difficult it is for retail, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my suggestion would be to wait until we get this before we go into the detail like you just said. But I suspect everything that you said is going to be coming back at us.
Yeah, and I think that's really important that we. If
We
we're going
need to hear from
If
them.
we're going to do this, that it come from John and his
Right.
board.
Exactly.
Speaking of that, he has
those
his hand up.
folks, and not from us. I know nothing
Got it.
about it.
Go ahead, John.
So.
Hi,
Mr.
yeah, so I do look forward to receiving, the lighting proposal in its current form so that I can send it out to our member base. But I do want you all to know as well that one of the things that we're going to do as an organization this year, and this is not just for our member businesses, but all businesses across Manchester, is we're actually going to create a contest that has a lot to do with decorating the window boxes in the various storefronts, allowing stores to decorate in a way and actually create a unique experience that we're going to market as well to visitors and locals alike. But it's going to be a contest. So if the town does have funds that they're able to help contribute towards that, that's great. So, but yeah, look forward to seeing what you have and submitting it to our members to see what their thoughts are. I just wanted to share that with you, that we are going to do something, even if that is accepted as is, we're still going to do more.
Great. Thank you, John.
Great idea.
All righty. Enough on that? Good. STR update. There are so many different approaches to this short-term rental thing. It's just every time you seem to do some investigating, you get a new perspective and on and on. And I apologize that we're not getting further along on this, but it's complicated. And Peter thinks that at a very soon the state's going to get involved in it. And so I don't have much to add to it right now, except work is being done to try to get enough information for us to discuss and maybe get to the next level. So.
I do have a question.
But my concern with the state getting involved, and I would feel that we would be in more of a rush to get our own rules in place before the state got involved. Because usually when the state gets involved, it's either it goes one or two ways. They'll look at other towns in Vermont that have already enacted rules and use those rules to create their rules. Or you have a lobby group, which there is a pretty powerful lobby group around STRs that will go to the state and they'll enact their rules. So either way, you might end up with something you don't want. So it'd be better if we were to work on something here and get something in place before the state.
I would be glad to help work on it. Would you assist me?
I would be happy to.
It would basically, in my opinion, just be a registration. So all the details that you need is the name of the owner, the name of the agent, have they complied with fire issues, police issues, et cetera, contact stuff, but nothing more than that to start with. And I talked at length with the village, and they have a almost amusing situation because they've enacted more of a regulation than a registration, and there's a fairly stiff fee to it too. And they've gotten basically no response. So I'm of the opinion that I think you have to start without a fee because you're not going to get a response if you have a fee, and you got to make it easy. We don't have a problem compared to other places. We have somewhere between maybe 200 to 300, we think. Stowe has 1,100. There's ski towns out west that have 10,000. It's small. The village, I don't think they have 20. But I will be glad to work with you to come up with a very simple registration form and see what people think of it.
You keep in mind, Stowe has a lot more apartments than we do. And a lot of those apartments have been turned into STRs. And so that's why the numbers are different. We don't have those kind of apartment numbers.
I have a question. Is this, can it work the other way? Are you wasting your time in developing a program ahead of the state and have to go back and change it per their bylaw?
The point,
I mean,
I personally think, Steve, that you got to have information at the town offices or the police office to know what's happening from a safety standpoint more than anything. And then also from a standpoint of gathering more information as to, do we need to have regulation? Is it affecting us negatively? Or is there a problem?
yeah, I agree.
Do we want to vote now on enacting a registration for STRs?
Let's wait until we see the registration.
So maybe, but can I ask a question first? So at our last meeting, we had talked about how there were a number of firms that may or may not be reasonably priced to help us assist doing that. And one of the things I asked was to get that information. So what those firms were and what those price
They're very expensive.
structures look like.
20 to 30,000 is what was.
Just to create a,
Well, they wouldn't really,
registry
they
or
wouldn't
to
break
do
it
the
off.
whole-
They want the whole enchilada. They don't want to break it off. At
so
least,
that, sorry, so
What
that'd
would
be
they-
similar to what Winhall's doing.
okay, so we're interested in, we can find another company or two that would be interested in helping us put a registration together. We'll investigate that.
Okay.
So if you have contacts,
No,
Okay.
I don't, but I agree and I disagree. I disagree with the notion that it's not a problem in Manchester. Again, I can think of several, and I understand that homeowners in Manchester, you just go through the grand list, and you can see there are a number of homeowners who have incorporated their properties for whatever reason, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But there are also a number of LLCs in Manchester, in the village, who have bought multiple properties. I can think of the yellow house right on the corner of School and Bonnet. There's another one in the village who the same person owns, that same person owns another property out in California. So I disagree with the idea or the notion that it's not an issue.
Can I interrupt?
But I do think it's incredibly important that if we're going to address it, we need valid data and data that has been segmented in a way that distinguishes between someone who is a primary homeowner and someone who is simply renting out a room in their house versus someone who has two properties and has explicitly incorporated it so that they can run.
I want
as
to say a
small
couple of
business.
things. I think I misspoke when I said it's not a problem. It's not a problem compared to other towns.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I believe, and I don't know enough to say for certain, but the information that you're looking for in terms of how many people are just renting a room, how many people are renting a couple of rooms, or how many people are renting a whole house for you, the different categories, that's going to be tough to find out.
100%. But I
And
don't know how, I don't
know how we're gonna do it.
I don't know how we treat the issue equitably, because I don't think that someone who's renting out a room in their house or a primary homeowner should be treated the same as a bed and breakfast.
that's why I personally believe it's just going to be a registration issue of who is the contact information, because we don't have that information, I don't think. And in trying to get it, Airbnb isn't worthless, is not worthwhile in my opinion, or what I've been told, because they only have a portion of the market. But
There are a number of ways to look at it. One of the, I know that we want to move on from this, but one of the ideas that I have is rather than what the village did, where they've required that you register with a fee, maybe we can look at asking, just requesting that everyone register. We can put something up on our website that collects the data, gives everyone the opportunity to segment it themselves, provide non-identifiable information, meaning you're not having to give out explicitly personal information that it may not be on a secure website. And if you have not registered by a certain date, there is a penalty.
Yep, that's what I was gonna say.
And from there, sorry, and from there, rather than saying, we're going to charge you X fee, or we're going to make you go through all of these standard procedures like a hotel or a bed and breakfast, we have something simple like what every hotel room has. One thing on the wall that has all of the contact information, not only for the owner, but for the non-emergency line for the police here in town, all of the resources that you will need.
Yeah, I think we could get into that later on. I think
Yeah.
right now we just do the require registration by a certain date.
And then there's.
And
potentially-
if we found someone that isn't registered and they're still operating by that time, we could.
We also already have something like that. If you have an alarm system in your house, you have to register with the police. So the police has a form that you fill out. So I think we might start there with that form and expand on it. But we have the issues you're talking about in terms of, is there proper fire control? Is there a wastewater system that's acceptable, on and on and on. But let us do some work to come back with a 1 or 2 pager that shows here's a registration to start looking at.
Okay.
And then, but we did look at the companies and they were asinine expensive. Yes.
Greg has his hand up.
Greg,
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
Apparently my internet connection's going between unstable and stable, which, speaks volumes. Tell me if you can still hear me, because it's freezing. Okay, good. So from somebody who has a B&B, I mean, an Airbnb in our house, from a realtor point of view, from a DRB member point of view, and who's looked at this every way, which way but sideways. I don't know what the registration is going to lead to in the very end, but if you want to affect the housing crisis, for example, it might be interesting to take a look at the ability to say that non-residents can't purchase a home for the use for the specific and specific use of a long-term, short-term rental property. And that possibly, unless you're a Vermont resident, you can't buy a property and turn it into a short-term rental. And you also need to be, or you need to be a resident and owner occupied short-term rental. I would never go so far as to tell people what they can do with their property in terms of renting 3 months or 6 months. That's up to them. But but you may affect the market and the ability, for example, in Dorset and Manchester, even if you freed up a property that was currently being used for short-term rentals exclusively, that doesn't mean that house is going to pop onto the market for something that's workforce or affordable housing. But it might open the door to dual income affordable housing, workforce housing. And that may be an avenue to start with. So I really don't, we pay Airbnb the rooms and meals tax, or that's taken out of the fee plus the 1% option tax. And I think that the short-term rental market is a huge boon to our town, because we are a tourist economy. And I think it'd be very interesting to see the state give up the revenue that they're generating through that channel. But I do think that those two things of saying owner occupied and you cannot turn a single family dwelling in Manchester into a full-time short-term rental would be would have some kind of effect.
Hey, Greg, I agree with you 100% on that. We looked at that 2 years ago and I came up with the same idea that you just proposed. And Greg Bosshart, who was at the time the chair, Greg said that it would be impossible for us to discriminate against someone based on where they are from for that reason. We couldn't give the option to someone who is a resident versus someone who's not a resident legally, is what I was told. And now
I'm not sure if that's true legally versus it is a pathway that's being taken by other towns across the country.
Yeah. I was just repeating what I was told 2 years ago.
I mean, it'd be worth
Proposed the
checking
same thing.
with council on that and finding out. But those would be two things that would have some effect on the housing crisis.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, I addressed this a meeting or two ago. I think my concern about short-term, and I know we need them, we need some, is that they take housing stock off the market. And some of that housing stock could be workforce housing, which we desperately, desperately need. The other thing that is striking me as I'm listening to this back and forth is that this is pretty complicated. This is complex. It's not a simple thing to do. I mean, I was going to say, well, who are we sending these registration forms to? Yes, we can put them online. Not everybody goes to the website and looks online. You can advertise the hell out of it and maybe get people to comply that way. And, you know, I'm not suggesting that people wouldn't if they knew about it. Very possibly they would. Maybe some wouldn't. I'm wondering, I mean, I understand that some firms that do this may be very expensive, but I also know that it's possible to hire a consultant on a, you know, for a block of hours at a particular cost, who would have the expertise to do what you need done or what we need done here. And I wonder if that isn't something that is at least worth looking at.
Peter has looked at that and it was very expensive.
On an I mean, for an individual person to do a specified amount of work for us by the hour?
The companies want to provide a whole block of information to you. They don't want to give you they don't want to say, I'll work for you for 20 hours and see what I can do. That's not what they're interested in doing. They're interested in doing a block. Here's the contract we're going to sign with you, and it's going to provide the following data, and it's going to be $25,000.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Wilbur. What I'm suggesting / asking is if it's possible to find someone in town, in the area, who actually has the expertise to do this as an individual, not as a, you know, not hiring a full-blown company that wants $25,000 to do a whole job that we may not even want or need done. That's all. That's what I'm.
in reference to Airbnb and VRBOs?
It's Airbnbs and Vibro and, but as Thomas said, Courtney, it's also these LLCs, and there are different types. When I said it's complicated, it really is complicated, because there are many, many categories. And I don't know how to suss it out. I really don't. I wish I did, because I feel it should be. I mean, I agree with Thomas on that, but I don't know how to do it. And if we can't afford a firm to do it, then maybe I mean, people do use individual consultants to do jobs for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that's a route that can be at least explored. I don't know, it's a suggestion.
Thank you. Anything else on STRs?
Yes, quickly. So Greg had he had suggested possibly prohibiting out-of-state residents from purchasing, I guess, I forget how he worded it, but a second home, and then prohibiting their ability to use that as a short-term rental. And then Leon, you had mentioned that, was it Greg? That said that was a protected class.
Greg Bosshart said that we couldn't discriminate against out-of-staters versus in-staters.
I actually think that we can. At least according to Vermont state law, I don't believe that that is a protected class. So just briefly looking, and I think that this is worth investigating further, but protected classes in the state of Vermont are race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, marital status, disability, military status, ancestry, so maybe in that respect, HIV status, and receipts of public assistance, but it does not say anything specifically about state of residence.
Well, I know we can charge different prices for taxes based on your primary residence, or your second home. And I think somewhere in that same language can be the language for primary living here versus out of town.
Yeah,
We will do that. So did you hear that?
I did.
Okay, all righty. Anything else on STRs? MU1, MU2 update. Joe, did you have, is that why you're here?
No,
Just wanting to learn, just want to educate yourself, huh?
as I said before, Wilbur, I wasn't expecting to even say anything. I just figured since I was here, I should start taking part.
Well, welcome.
The MU1, MU2 update, I think, is best stated by saying we're getting some advice from council on it, okay? So vendor's license, I didn't put that on. Go ahead.
Greg,
Greg, yes, Greg.
I'm unmuting, sorry. I just want to quickly call to Peter's and Elias's attention that the city of Burlington has a short-term rental framework on its website on addressing the issues that we're concerned with.
Thank you.
You will take a look.
Vendor's license, I didn't put that on here, so
That was a discussion with Tim Waker, reference to changing the ordinance, so we would have a look, the DAB would have a look at vendor licenses where they may impact parking, where they may impact other infrastructure that the DRB.
DRB, did you say, or DAB?
Tim Waker and I had a conversation about when the select board approves a vendor's license, there's a provision in the vendor's license that calls out for either planning commission input or DAB input. But when Tim goes along, he wants the opportunity to have a look at the site prior to, like the farmer's market is coming up. We're gonna go look at that tomorrow for potential safety issues. They're moving to a new site. They're gonna be moving there permanently, but as a temporary measure for the vendor's license, they have a full year really before it becomes problematic.
So you're basically informing us of a procedure.
A procedure we're looking to have implemented somehow. Maybe we put that into a simplified language in the ordinance that invokes that provision.
Oh,
I know we used to have very, very long conversations about parking and how much parking each business has. And I know that if we're gonna put out we're gonna approve a vendor license for a vendor, that space, the area where they are should have enough parking for not just them, but the businesses that are surrounding them. And so it would be something that we would have already in our rules, I'm sure, that would address that, and that would just be up to the DRB to look at those rules and then make that decision themselves. I don't think so. It would come back to the planning commission. We just make the rules. The rules are followed by other boards. So I'm not sure how that would be something that we would have to approve for each person.
I think the thought process was right now, as the ordinance stands, as I understand it, is that the select board could write a vendor license without necessarily looking at the parking or the safety issues.
Would the DRB be the one to approve it before the select board would write the license?
Well, they would make a recommendation that they do approve it, or they do it additionally.
Okay.
So if they saw something out in the field that could be a problem, they would mention it in the, I would imagine that the vendor's license would be approved subject to those conditions.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I would really appreciate. I would really appreciate it if we didn't put items on the, put it under other business. But don't put it on the agenda when we have no idea what this is, why it is, what we're supposed to do with it. I mean, we can have a category called other business, and when we get to other business, if we have time, then that can be raised. If we're supposed to deal with it, then we can be notified and given some information that we have to work with. That, I think, would be a procedure that would make sense. I'm looking at this, and we have other business. That probably should be under other business.
Point well taken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other business. Town plan. Peter had a friend of his stop by who has a lot of experience in this area, and he suggested that we look at the town of Malta town plan. And I have looked at it, and I'm bringing a paper copy here to hand to anybody who wants to take it and look at it. It's a lot closer to what I would want to see, in that it talks about what we want and what we need to do to get it that way. And it's specific by category and situation. So
I see it divides into neighborhoods as well, and it's like, so each neighborhood has their own input of what they want for their neighborhood.
and it talks about how to achieve what you want in a particular, it's detailed oriented.
That was
So can you distribute that after you take a look at it?
Yeah, I
Good.
will. And I was gonna say, we don't have, I have a cousin who visited me recently, and he lives in a town called Heldsburg in California. Small town, it's not a big town. But they have they have a plan which begins with first, and actually Newton, Massachusetts, we did something similar. Begins with values, the values that we hold. And from the values, you get guiding principles. And I'm trying to think of its guiding principles,
It's in there.
objectives, okay, objectives, and then the objectives lead to policies. And I thought that was a really, good structure that might inform some of the way we structure what eventually we're going to do. Because one thing leads to another, and yet you're starting with an overarching set of values, principles, things that you believe, that the town believes. And for that, we need to hear from our population.
It's all in there.
Great, I will look.
Peter, I need you to help me on this.
Yeah, well, so at the previous select board meeting, there was contention onto 2 items on those 24. So all I did was bold them and summarize what the contention was. So all you need to do is approve that report to go to the select.
So number 5, language is added to section 3.1.1 to allow administrative approval of multi-unit residential development. And you want us to,
The contention was posed whether that should remain in that document or not. I'm just summarizing what.
Did the select board have a problem with these particular items?
Mike raised the issue that on the copy that he had of the proposed ordinance change, there was a red line struck through, and all they were looking to do is to get some clarity on that.
Greg and Heidi actually both have their hands up, so.
Heidi, go ahead.
You just answered the question, Peter. The problem had nothing to do with the language. The problem was confusion around why in the copy that was warned, was it red line, was it struck through, and it was read and struck through.
Okay, so are we approving this number 5, or is this all set?
I think they're saying that the copy they received had a line drawn through it for some reason, but I think we sent it back to them.
You had approved it, and the point was raised at the meeting that there was a copy that had a red line through it. We have a copy that doesn't have a red line through it. So
maybe it
we're
was,
making sure that that number 5 should move forward.
So you want it to be approved again by us? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve number 5?
my motion.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, number 13, the dimensional standards table. I was under the impression that, go ahead.
Those approved, there was just confusion on what a modest increase.
Let's say that. What is a modest increase?
We have that.
Is this the section where the paper was cut off when it printed?
Yes.
Yeah, I can grab an ordinance right now.
Is that just because of the formatting of the
That's
document?
I have an ordinance here if you want it.
Yeah, I can read off what a modest increase is.
So I mean,
Greg,
It's like we just-
still want to talk?
information.
Yeah, these were two issues where the board, the document that was associated with the warning had a line crossed through the first, and the second was that the page was cut off and the board couldn't see what a modest increase was. And
Thank you.
we would have liked to have adopted at that point, but it was pointed out correctly that was because it was warned relative to those documents that we couldn't, and it would come back to us. So we really just need, and whatever document comes back relative to the warning should be correct. And I think Elias is about to tell you that the actual language of those increases are X to Y.
Yeah, one second. Peter went to grab it. It's the ordinance that's marked up. It's the one that I need.
While we're waiting for that, new business, any other business?
I do have other business. I don't know that we have enough time while we're waiting, but you and I had briefly discussed this, and I think I need Peter here to be able to help answer it, but the question of Willow Pond has come up, and what their status is. And to be clear, I'm not asking for a grand presentation on what has happened in the past and where this process currently stands. But it is clear that there is movement happening on that property, as evident by a zoning permit to add a brand new sign. And after some, without going into any detail, some communication between the current developers, there is intent to move forward in some way. There is question as to whether or not their intent is to do something that's related to affordable or workforce housing, whether it has something to do with demolishing the entire property and building dozens of incredibly expensive homes. So my other business is asking for an update on where that property stands as it is currently zoned, and so that we can be aware and take any action that we may need to take, and so that the public can be aware, because there's lots of confusion about what's actually going on simply because a sign is being put up.
I will say in the past that what we had looked, the previous owners, we had looked at it to be affordable housing. There was not enough septic space.
My understanding.
To put in a septic system to run for all of those as full-time residents. Now, with the Act 250 changing the way it's changed, where it can be approved by the local our local groups, it would be, that might be something that's changed to allow that. However, with the new owners, I don't think anybody has any information as what they want.
That's
What
not
would you do?
active.
What
You have to
would,
be certain conditions too.
I think unfortunately, it's a little premature to look to find details on what they want to do.
No, yeah, and my question isn't about what they want to do, it's to have an understanding of what they can currently do for the property. So at our next meeting, if we can get that information, so that the 4 or whoever the 5th is, has a complete understanding of what that currently looks like and what it could look like moving forward, because there is activity starting to happen. And I think that we should be prepared for that.
I don't know detail on it, Thomas, but I suspect they can do anything they want.
Well, we can also make changes.
We can also what?
Yeah, we as a planning commission can make changes to,
they might be buying it to open up as an inn, and it was already an inn, and that would be probably no changes.
They have a permit that's probably expired. So they would have to come back to the DRB for either a renewal of that, some fashion, or change to that.
well, my question was to better understand what the current zoning is for that property. So, and we don't need to answer that question now, but if we could discuss that at our next meeting so that we
Yeah, we can figure that out.
fully understand it.
Oh, what the zoning is and
And
what's
what they're
by-
really
what-
allowed to do.
What is by right there?
Yes.
Ah.
Okay.
Peter, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. Have
Go
we
ahead.
had conversation with you yet? Have they,
They have
Had
not had-
conversation.
Conversation was basically they're at preliminary stage of investigating what they can do with the property. All things lean towards them probably doing some project at market rate, but I don't know that.
but do they know what they can and can't do
They have a copy of the permit,
of what's,
what was there, what was approved.
I think we need to be awful careful on how we get involved with that process. I think we need to, in a sense, kind of bend over a little bit to get that project rolling, whether it be affordable housing. You know, I'd rather see it be affordable housing than expensive housing. But
To say I have serious doubts that it will be affordable or workforce housing based on the name of the LLC when it has the name estates in it.
Yeah.
I highly doubt,
well, I have,
which is why I'm bringing this up.
I have some information, but I can't share it with you.
Let's move on here. This is, the request has been that we get some information to understand what is possible, and that's a good request. Go ahead.
If anyone's still interested in the modest increase.
Yes.
Okay, so the modest lot coverage increase in rural residential is from 10 to 15%. In rural agricultural, it's from 5 to 7.5%. And in forest conservational, it is from 1 to 3%. So the largest percent,
You start, the rural residential was what?
We can give you a copy.
10 to 15,
Thank you.
Agricultural was what?
5 to
5 to
7.5.
Do we have a comfort level to make a motion to accept this number 13?
Yeah, I think so.
And
I
a
will.
second,
Yeah, a second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Heidi Chamberlain and Brian both have their hands up.
Heidi?
Yeah, I just wanted to request that we could make sure that particular table is included in the amended version that comes back to us. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, Brian?
Yep, no, I apologize, Wilder. I think it's better that I not join in that conversation. But Mr. Nichols was spot on in saying you guys need to be very careful in an open meeting what you imply and what you say about people's properties.
Got it. Thank you. Other issues or other business? No? You have a motion?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. That was quick. My goodness. All our new rules must have worked, right?
Where you want to meet?
Recording stopped.
you know, or maybe next Monday is probably better, next week.
You call it.
I'm taking time next week. And we can go